What kind of person writes a children's grief book about the spouse they allegedly red-rummed? Most people would want to lay low after taking out their husband, but not Kouri Richins. She wrote a book called Are You With Me?, supposedly to help her children grieve the death of their father, and then went about publicly promoting it right up until the time of her arrest. For those of you who are new to the Kouri Richins, Eric Richins case, I'll do a quick recap before we dive in. But first, please take a second to support me by liking the video because that helps it get in front of more people who are interested in this case. In 2013, Kouri Darden and Eric Richins tied the knot in a cozy backyard ceremony in Francis, Utah. Eric was a successful masonry business owner, and Kouri had ambitions to run her own real estate flipping business. They had 3 young sons, and from the outside, it looked idyllic. But behind closed doors, Kouri was starting to crack early on. By 2015, she had secretly taken out several life insurance policies totaling $2 million without Eric even knowing about it. Over the next few years, she allegedly siphoned over $500,000 from his business through unauthorized credits, loans, and tax payments. Her real estate ventures were tanking, racking up $6 million in debt by 2019. Eric discovered the theft from his company in September of 2020, leading to explosive arguments between Eric and Kouri. He consulted divorce attorneys, rewrote his will, and set up a trust that explicitly excluded Kouri from managing his estate. Fast forward to 2022, around February 11th or 12th, Kouri reportedly bought up to 30 illicit fenty pills from a contact, possibly her housekeeper's supplier. On Valentine's Day, February 14th, Eric bit into a sandwich that Kouri had made for him and suffered a severe reaction, breaking out in hives. He told friends he thought that she tried to poison him, even using his son's EpiPen to survive. He texted, "I think my wife tried to poison me." Kouri allegedly bought more fenty on February 26th, and on March 3rd, supposedly to celebrate the closing of a big real estate deal, which I don't think actually closed, Kouri made Eric a Moscow Mule cocktail at home. He drank it and then went to bed around 9 p.m. Kouri claims that she slept in their son's room because of his nightmares and returned to their room at around 3 a.m. to find Eric cold and unresponsive. But according to the autopsy, he had 5 times the lethal dose of fentanyl in his system. No pill residue in his stomach, which suggested that it was dissolved in his drink. Now, what we're specifically covering today is the evidence trail that shows this was not impulse. It was a long game of financial abuse that ended in red rum. And I see some very familiar patterns here. Charm, pretty privilege for Kouri, compartmentalization, and zero empathy. Before we dive into this, I want to be clear. I'm not a psychologist or mental health professional. I say this all the time. What I share comes from my own experiences in surviving a coercive control relationship and years of studying these patterns after watching my own cousin manipulate an entire community before committing red rum. I see these cases through the lens of someone who knows what these red flags look like because I missed them in my own life before I went through my healing process and therapy. The Kouri Richins case hits differently for me because of the financial abuse, the gaslighting, the performance of grief. I've seen this playbook before in my own past relationships. So when I walk you through this evidence today, I'm showing you what I wish someone would have shown me, what these patterns look like in real time, and why they're so hard to spot when you're in them. So today we're looking at 2 pieces of key evidence that the prosecution says prove Kouri planned Eric's murder. Now, her trial is set to begin on February 10th with jury selection. And so that's why I'm doing a deep dive into the case now so that you'll be ready when trial comes out. And I am going to be doing trial recaps every single day here on the channel. Make sure that you subscribe and hit notifications so that you know when I'm covering the trial. So today we're going to talk about the search warrant for Lisa Darden, who is Kouri Richins' mom, and we're going to read through that infamous walk the dog letter, which is a key piece of evidence in the case. Now, we've already talked about the insurance policies that Kouri opened between 2015 and 2017, totaling $1.9 million. She also tried to make herself the sole beneficiary of another policy that Eric held jointly with his business partner. That company actually alerted Eric to the change, and he switched it back to his business partner. According to the court documents, when Kouri learned about this, she became enraged and physically assaulted Eric's sister by punching her in the face, as she was the one who got named beneficiary of Eric's trust. This is textbook economic control. It's not just about the money itself. It's about creating a situation where you have contingency plans that your partner doesn't know about. You're setting up an escape hatch for yourself, or in this case, allegedly for Kouri, a payday. When the person that you're married to doesn't have full information about their own financial life, it means they can't make informed decisions about their safety or their future. And what makes Eric's situation even more tragic is that he was starting to see it. He had removed Kouri's name from his $500,000 life insurance policy. He changed his will. He removed her and named his sister instead. So he knew something was wrong. And that awareness, unfortunately, seems to have escalated the danger that he was in. So let's go back to Valentine's Day 2022 for a second. This was about 2.5 weeks before Eric died. According to court documents, Eric became violently ill after Valentine's Day dinner at their home. He was so sick that he genuinely believed Kouri had poisoned. So think about that poisoning for a second. Your spouse makes you dinner, you get violently ill, and your first thought isn't food poisoning, it isn't the flu, it's my wife poisoned me. That tells you that Eric already had serious concerns about Kouri's intentions towards him. This was not paranoia. This was a man who knew he was in danger. So here's what I'll tell you from my own experience with coercive control. When somebody that you love, especially somebody you've built a life with, somebody you have trusted previously, becomes a threat to your physical safety, your brain does not want to accept that idea. There is this huge cognitive dissonance where you're trying to reconcile. This person says that they love me and we've had all these good times and memories together, and you're trying to reconcile that with this person might be trying to hurt me. It is easier to think that you're being paranoid than to accept the truth. So Eric survived Valentine's Day, but prosecutors allege that survival taught Kouri something, that she needed a higher dose. The first attempt hadn't worked. And that's when, according to the evidence we're about to look at, she went back for more. Now, with as much research and personal experience as I've done on domestic violence and my own survival, I can tell you that abusers who escalate to this level don't just suddenly snap. They test boundaries along the way to see what they can get away with. And if something doesn't work, they just adjust their strategy. But Eric surviving that attempt on Valentine's Day is when the evidence trail really started to build up. So now we're going to talk about the search warrant for Lisa Darden's phone. But before that, I just wanted to let you know that I've created an e-course about how to identify and defend against manipulative behavior called Bully Proof. It's over 16 hours of videos as well as PDF references and lots of resources. And you can find it as well as all of my bonus content on my Patreon at patreon.com/the midlife revolution. Now I want to show you this search warrant for Lisa Darden's phone, and we're going to go through it together. And prosecutors say that this shows that Kouri was thinking several steps ahead. Now, this was the affidavit for the search warrant that was presented by Detective Jeff O'Driscoll of Summit County Sheriff's Office. And this states that on March 4th, 2022 at 03:22 hours, Summit County Dispatch received a 911 call from a female party, later identified as Kouri Richins, about an unresponsive male. The male was Eric Richins, Kouri's husband. Deputies and EMS staff responded to the residence to attempt life-saving measures. Life-saving measures failed, and Eric Richins was declared deceased. Deputies held the scene and requested the medical examiner's office, as well as detectives from Summit County Sheriff's Office, to respond to the scene. While waiting for detectives and the ME investigator, Deputy Wynn conducted an initial interview with Kouri Richins. Kouri stated that she, Eric, and Kouri's mother, Lisa Darden, had been celebrating Kouri closing on a house for her business the night before around 9 p.m. Kouri stated they had a drink to celebrate. Kouri stated Eric then went to bed. Kouri stated she went in to sleep with one of their children due to the fact that the child has night terrors. Kouri stated she woke up around 0300 hours and came back to she and Eric's bedroom. Kouri stated that at the time she felt Eric, he was cold to the touch. That was when she called 911. After determining that Eric's death was not likely due to natural causes, his body was transported to the medical examiner's office to perform an autopsy. After approximately 3 weeks, toxicology findings from the autopsy were available. It was determined that Eric died from an overdose of fentanyl. When speaking to the medical examiner's office, the doctor indicated the level of F in Eric Richins' body was approximately 5 times the lethal dosage. The medical examiner determined the F was illicit and not pharmaceutical grade. It was also the opinion of the medical examiner doctor that the F had been ingested orally due to gastric fluid contents. After receiving the information regarding the toxicology, a search warrant was obtained for Eric and Kouri's residence. During the service of that search warrant, Kouri's phone as well as several computers were seized as evidence. Warrants were obtained for all the electronic devices, and the information from those devices was downloaded to be investigated. When investigators went through the information from Kouri's phone, it appeared several text messages around the time frame from March 1st through March 15th had been deleted. This was the time surrounding Eric's death. Several communications between Kouri and redacted were located. Through the course of the investigation, detectives began to investigate individuals close to both Kouri and Eric Richins. During that time, redacted was identified as being a housekeeper often used by Kouri for her residential real estate business. A police records check of this person revealed multiple counts of possession of a controlled substance with intent to distribute, possession of a controlled substance, and possession of drug paraphernalia. Redacted also had charges of theft, DUI, burglary, and aggravated assault. Due to the fact that the F discovered in Eric Richins was illicit, it was plausible that redacted was the source of the F. While conducting an investigation into that person, someone else was identified as an associate of them. This person has a chemistry degree and had been previously charged in Heber City with clandestine lab charges for operating a math lab. It was also learned that blank has a boyfriend named blank who is currently incarcerated somewhere. And after learning this information, detectives spoke to staff at that facility and requested phone calls that they made from March 1st through March 5th. During one phone call between these two people, blank answers the phone and states he's on a break from drug court. It was verified through court records that these two people were in drug court together at the time. At 2:32, 2 minutes 32 seconds into the call, they say, "Tell blank I say hi." A female can then be heard in the background saying, "Hi, honey." Blank then responds by saying, "Hi," and their name. On March 3rd, 2022, this person called this phone number. That's one of the phone numbers investigators identified as belonging to this other person. Grant, redaction error, starts the call by saying, "Good morning, blank." The remainder of the call is discussing a possible mutual acquaintance blank knows in person. On March 4th, they make a phone call to blank. During that phone call, the two are discussing purchasing an Xbox controller for their son while he is blank. One makes the comment he would pay for the controller, then responds by saying, quote, "You or blank, one of the two," then responds by saying, "I tried giving that $100 yesterday," and say, "Hey, let me pay you back. I'm paying you back." She's all, "What the F? No, you keep it. I just made $1,000 selling effing F," or some crap like that. That call between the two occurred the same day Eric Richins died. Now, if you're confused because of all of the redactions, what I'm getting from this part of the affidavit is that they obtained this prison call, and it sort of proves that the housekeeper had made $1,000 selling F, and they are mutual acquaintances of all of the people involved here. So on the 27th of March, one of these people was arrested on misdemeanor traffic offenses and booked into the jail. On May 2nd, myself and the other detectives interviewed them while they were in custody, and I think this is the housekeeper, post Miranda warning, admitted to supplying Kouri Richins with 15 to 30 F pills on 2 separate occasions, approximately 1 month before Eric's death. She stated Kouri paid her approximately $900 each time she supplied the pills. She provided details of the solicitation of the drugs, the pickup and drop-off locations, and other pertinent details that have been corroborated with digital forensic evidence. In investigating Kouri's associates, it was discovered that in 2006, Richins' mother, Lisa Darden, was living with an adult female with whom she was having a romantic relationship. In April of that year, her romantic partner died unexpectedly. An autopsy report of the female partner showed that her immediate cause of death was a drug poisoning from an overdose of oxy. Further investigation showed that Lisa Darden had been named as the beneficiary of her partner's estate a short time before her death. The female did have current prescriptions for oxy and reportedly struggled with abusing her meds. She, however, was not in a state of recovery from addiction at the time of her death. Based on my training and experience, the sheriff says, this would likely rule out the possibility of an accidental overdose. This is the bombshell part of the case. Mom had done a similar scam back in 2006. So is this a case of like mother like daughter? Well, Lisa Darden was never charged in that case. And I will also tell you this. Sky Lazaro, who was the attorney for Kouri Richins at one point, responded to a reporter's request for comment with the following statement, quote, Summit County is well aware that opioid addiction and fentanyl overdose is a rampant problem throughout the country. According to the CDC, 150 people die every day from overdoses related to synthetic opioids like F. Not only was Summit County the first Utah county to file a lawsuit against, quote, Big Pharma, opioid manufacturers and distributors in 2022 Park City Police, the Summit County Sheriff, Summit County Attorney, and Park City School District issued a joint statement to its citizens warning, quote, they're finding an increasing amount of F, a drug fueling a surge in accidental overdoses nationwide. The fact that Ms. Darden's significant other was one of the millions that suffered from and ultimately succumbed to opioid addiction is hardly suspicious. It is tragic and unfortunately quite common. The fact that Ms. Darden was the beneficiary of her romantic partner's life insurance policy is also not unique. It only demonstrates that her circumstances are no different than most families in America. To suggest otherwise is nothing more than baseless conspiracy theory. Now, going back to the search warrant, it says in reviewing forensic downloads of Kouri Richins' phone, it is clear she's very close with her mother and communicates with her almost daily, both for personal matters and in her business dealings. Conversations have been found on Kouri's phone showing disdain for Eric on Lisa's part, which sounds very familiar to the Adelson case. Based on Lisa Darden's proximity to her partner's suspicious overdose death and her relationship with Kouri, it is possible that she was involved in planning and orchestrating Eric's death. So on May 8th, 2023, detectives served a search warrant on Lisa Darden's house. A blue Samsung cell phone was recovered and identified as Lisa's current cell phone. So this warrant is an application for them to search that phone. So definitely, I can't tell you what Lisa knew or didn't know about Eric's death. That's, of course, for the trial to determine. But I can tell you this from experience. Family members of manipulative people often get pulled into things that they don't fully understand. Now, I'm not trying to give her a pass because we haven't seen all of the evidence yet. But family members are usually told a story, and they want to help their daughter or their son or their other relative or loved one. And before they know it, they're complicit in something they never would have agreed to if they've had all the information or the full picture. The manipulator almost always parcels out information, so they give little bits and pieces to certain people, but nobody ever sees the whole plan. You're only given the pieces that you need to play the role they want you to play. But here's one of the other things that I keep coming back to in the evidence is that Kouri used her mother's phone to order these pills, allegedly, to distance herself from the digital evidence. So she did that specifically to hide her involvement. And the search warrant states that they found Kouri's fingerprints on her mom's phone, that she had access to it, and that she borrowed it multiple times during the periods when these transactions allegedly took place. This level of planning from Kouri, that's not somebody who just snapped. That's someone executing a plan. And in my experience, people who plan like this have already justified it to themselves completely. In their mind, they're not even doing anything wrong. They're solving a problem. The problem just happens to be a person. Now let's talk about how these pills allegedly got from the dealer to Kouri. Now, when we talk about this subject, there's going to be a twist in this case that came up pretty recently. So if you haven't watched my case recap where I talk about all the things I'm going to cover this year, this will be new information to you about somebody's testimony regarding these pills. Now, according to court documents and charging documents, Kouri had an acquaintance named Carmen Lauber. That's the name of the person I believe that was redacted from that search warrant. Lauber worked as Kouri's housekeeper. She was 51 years old at the time, and according to investigators, she had a significant drug history. We already heard about that in the search warrant that we went through. When Summit County detectives began investigating Eric's death, they found several text messages from March 1st, 2022 to March 15th between Kouri and Carmen. Now, remember in the affidavit that we just went over, Carmen admits to supplying Kouri with 15 to 30 pills on separate occasions. She stated she got paid $900 each time, and she provided all the details of the exchange. So according to investigators, this is how it worked. Kouri would contact Carmen. Carmen would then contact a dealer in Ogden, Utah, a man named Robert Crozier. Lauber would obtain the pills from Crozier and then deliver them to Kouri. The first transaction allegedly happened around early February of 2022, shortly before Valentine's Day. The second transaction happened in late February, just days before Eric died. Now, here's the major development in the case. In October of 2025, Crozier, who was originally the prosecution's key witness regarding linking the pills to Kouri, recanted his earlier statement. When detectives first interviewed him in 2023, Crozier was in jail, and by his own admission, he was detoxing from drug use. He told them that he had sold F to Carmen Lauber. But when prosecutors from the Summit County Attorney's Office re-interviewed him in April of 25, Crozier changed his story. According to the sworn affidavit filed by the defense, Crozier stated, quote, "I told them no, I sold Oxy to Carmen Lauber on 2 occasions in early 2022. They asked why I'd previously told officers that I had sold her F. I told them I did not remember saying that and that I had been detoxing during that interview and I was, quote, out of it. I told them that I was certain that I had sold Carmen Oxy." So this is huge because this is the defense's entire argument for why Kouri should be granted bail and potentially why the case should be dismissed. Now, she's been denied bail repeatedly, but they argue that if Robert Crozier didn't sell F to Lauber, then there's no credible chain of custody linking the F to Kouri. The defense wrote in their motion, quote, "If the state cannot place F in the hands of Richins, the state has no case. Mr. Crozier's statement doesn't just poke holes in their case, it throws a grenade into the middle of it," unquote. Now, I'm not an attorney, but this is where the trial matters. Prosecutors argue that Crozier's original statement is more credible because it was corroborated by other evidence. The text messages, the financial transactions, Carmen's detailed account of the pickup and drop-off locations, and most importantly, the fact that Eric Richins died with 5 times the lethal dose of illicit F in his system. Prosecutors state in their response, quote, "Ultimately, of course, Mr. Crozier's interview is corroborated by the constellation of means, motive, and opportunity, evidence against Richins, and the toxicology results showing that Eric Richins died of F poisoning. Mr. Crozier's recent assertion does not amount to a material change in circumstances because it is not credible," unquote. So who's telling the truth? Was Crozier more reliable when he was detoxing in 2023 or when he was sober in 2025? That's for the jury to sort out this coming February. But what I can tell you is this: even if we set aside Crozier's testimony entirely, there are still text messages between Kouri and Carmen, financial transactions showing $900 payments, and the fact that Eric died of a massive F overdose after Kouri made him a drink. From my perspective, as someone who's looked at patterns of manipulation and control for years, the question isn't just where did the F come from? The question is, why was Kouri contacting someone to get pills at all? And why did Eric end up dead right after that? So now finally, the walk the dog letter. If you haven't seen this or heard of it before, this is something that we need to talk about. This has become one of the most controversial points and pieces of evidence in the entire case. In September 2023, while Kouri was in the Summit County Jail awaiting trial, a corrections officer named Sergeant Braxton Barrett was conducting a routine check of her cell. He found a 6-page handwritten letter. At the top of the letter were the words, "Walk the dog," in capitals, but take vague notes so you remember. The letter was addressed to Kouri's mother, Lisa Darden, who we've talked about before, but it was never mailed. Prosecutors say this letter is evidence of witness tampering, that Kouri was instructing her family members on how to provide false testimony to help her defense, specifically Kouri's brother. Now, her defense team says the letter is part of a 65-page fictional manuscript she was writing about a woman who goes to Mexico to find the people who sold her husband the drugs that killed him. But let me walk you through what the letter says, because the context is critical to understanding why prosecutors are so focused on it. Now, I accessed this letter on scribd.com. I have a subscription to this service where you can find PDFs of all kinds of things uploaded there. And they're not sponsoring me or anything like that, but it is a good service. It's not very expensive, and I usually use it for sheet music, but I was able to find this here. So at the top of the letter, walk the dog with exclamation marks, but take vague notes so you remember with a little asterisk. Sky is saying, even if the gummies have fentanyl in them, the prosecutor will say, I tried to put the fentanyl in the gummies so Eric would have them. So there was this idea that he took a gummy before he went to bed that night, so they were trying to test to see if that had fentanyl in it. Sky is, again, Kouri's attorney. Stupid, I know, but that's what she's thinking. We will still test them, though. However, she wants to link Eric getting drugs and pills from Mexico, so we need some kind of connection. Her private investigator is doing some research on the ranch/cartel place Eric would stay at. Here is what I'm thinking. But you have to talk to Ronnie. That's her brother. He would probably have to testify to this, but it's super short, not a lot to it. He will need to tell Sky at the meeting next week. Upon information and belief, just like they say, a year prior to Eric's death, Ronnie was over watching football one Sunday, and Eric and Ronnie were chatting about Eric's Mexico trips. Eric told Ronnie he gets pain pills/fentanyl from Mexico, from the workers at the ranch, and not to tell me because I would get mad, because I always said he just gets high every night and won't help take care of the kids. There are pictures in my phone of Eric passed out on the floor or in the chair. This is one of those things that drives me crazy because context matters. And there have been many times in my life where people have tried to use photographs or videos taken out of context to try and prove someone else's bad behavior when we don't know why the person was sitting in the chair or why the person quickly got up and went somewhere. We don't have that context. They just show it and put their own little narrative on it to make somebody look bad. Ronnie should have texts from Eric talking about getting high as well. Eric told Ronnie he keeps them in an allergy pill bottle in his work truck so I wouldn't find them. Ronnie never told me about the conversation. Eric finally told me and asked if Carmen could get him some. Eric never wanted anyone to know he had an issue, especially get caught. He always wanted Kouri to go down for him. When they traveled, Eric would put his drugs in Kouri's bag at the airlines right before they boarded. That way, if they were caught, Kouri would get in trouble, not him. Once they got to wherever they were going, Eric would pull the drugs out of her bag and it would cause a huge fight. She was pissed he would risk her going to jail for his drug use. He just would laugh about it. Eric couldn't ruin his image that he had drug issues, so he would do whatever he had to. Now, at this point, I'm super curious about how much of this is projection, and I hope that's going to come out in the trial. Kouri has never done any type of pills, didn't like them. Rarely would she consume THC, only if Eric begged her, which I doubt ever happened, because it was a special occasion. And then she puts an asterisk, reword this however he needs to make the point, just include it all. The connection has to be made with Mexico and drugs. Ronnie will have the messages to prove Eric confided in him about getting high. It can be short and to the point, but has to be done. Upon information and belief, LOL. They never found pain pills or fentanyl in my house because he hid it in an allergy bottle in a work truck, and Cody emptied out the work truck within a week, so they were never found. When you talk to Ronnie about this, meet up with him in person. I worry sometimes your house and phone are bugged. Again, this is a letter she's writing to her mom. Maybe drive down to Salt Lake and meet him after work without Bree. Sky has to make the connection between Eric and Mexico because that makes the most sense in her mind. If it's Ronnie's information and belief about the conversation over football, she can use that as a connection. Tell Ronnie don't overanalyze it. It was a quick 2-minute conversation, LOL. Tell him I need him to do this. Bring me home, and then we will get those damn bitches. Also, please text Lotto or call. Tell him do not text me anything about us doing things together ever, like church, skiing, trips. Nothing that puts us together. It doesn't look good. We're so close to the end. Let's push through. Have the conversation with Ronnie before he meets with Sky. Then tell him to tell Sky at the meeting about the conversation. Hang in there. We're almost there. Love you to the moon. Heart. Take vague notes of all this so you remember before you walk the dog. Page 4. I saw a commercial yesterday, Utah Mortgage Relief. Google them, please. It's for people behind on their mortgage. Can you see if they can help at all on Marissa's house, please? We have to get hers, yours, and Chelsea's taken care of ASAP. Try to go to that place in Camas. What about asking Lotto to do a loan solely in his name and not have you on there? I know he can do a home equity line of credit on his house in Hideout. Not sure if he would, but I know he has like $1 million in equity. Maybe he just doesn't know about a HELOC, home equity. If he wants to help me, taking care of those loans is most important. I don't give a shit about the Yotels. Remember I told you one way to get at Katie, that's Eric's sister, is going through my phone and finding a picture of her girls, even with the boys. Print 15 copies and send them out anonymously to different media companies. Obviously, don't email the pictures so it's not traceable. She would be livid if it got out to the public. You would just have to do it sneaky and be careful. She would try and trace it back to you. If not, no worries. Just still trying to manipulate things from behind the scenes and get revenge on somebody that literally did nothing to her. It's not her fault that Eric made her the trustee of his estate. Page 5. Sky is having the My Girls do the first interview with Good Morning America. Please tell Chelsea to bring up that he hasn't been to church in the 13 years she has known him. Now, Eric was raised a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He even served a mission to Mexico, but he had kind of drifted away from the church. And that's not a bad thing for most people, but Kouri would want to use that against him to try and impeach his character. Back to the letter. And Eric would brag to her about how much he drank and did pills in high school. Tell Kelsey to say, quote, Eric always wanted Kouri to go down for him. For example, he would put drugs in her suitcase when we travel, and then she goes through that whole narrative again. And then she says, as if it was okay that I got in trouble. Have Selma talk about Eric in Spain not being able to drink, so he was looking for drugs the entire time, and explain the drink the waitress gave him, and how I called his doctor and went to the pharmacy immediately. Have Allie talk about how the sisters have always been jealous of me. This is Eric's sisters, because anything they could do, Kouri could do better. Being a mom, college, stay-at-home wife until she built $1 million company, which was not $1 million company. I mean, unless you count being $1 million in debt, actually $6 million in debt. A nice house, car, everything she had, they wanted. This comes down to jealousy, money, and Eric's partying that they don't want to acknowledge, and sadly, an accidental overdose. Lastly, don't forget to work on the gun receipts. We want to file charges and let the prosecutor not do anything about it to use in our defense. Will you buy a box of Crest white strips, open them up, put them in an envelope, and have Sky give them to me? You can tell her what's in the envelope. I'm sure she won't care. I'll make sure they can't be found in my cell. My teeth are yellow from so much coffee and tea all day, frowny face. I love you, I love you, I love you. Hang in there. We're getting there. Slowly, you're the best mom in the whole world. I'm so lucky to have you. So at the end of this letter, Kouri asking mom to have her attorney smuggle Crest white strips into the jail. This is what kills it for Kouri's defense on this letter, because in a September 16th, 2023 phone call from the jail, Kouri told her mother, quote, "I asked Sky to sneak me in some white strips because my teeth are getting yellow because all we do is drink coffee in the Mexican prison." Mexican prison is how she referred to the Summit County Jail. And that phrase is key because in the same phone call, Kouri claimed walk the dog wasn't actually a letter at all. She told her family member, well, and they keep saying it's a letter. It was never a letter, like it was part of a freaking book. Now, according to this explanation on the phone, the plot of Kouri's book was that after jumping bail, she and her father, who she notes has been dead for 2 years, go to Mexico to a ranch where Eric had previously stayed. While there, they find the people who sold Eric the fentanyl that killed him. They also realize human trafficking is happening at the ranch, and they attempt to return to America, where Kouri is arrested for fleeing the country. She said, quote, "And then I get out of Mexico jail, and then the trial starts, and I write about the trial. Who's testifying?" Like they literally took those papers out of the story. So prosecutors, of course, wanted the full 65-page manuscript to see if her explanation holds up. And the judge has allowed some portions of the walk the dog letter to be used at trial, but we don't yet know which portions will be admitted and which won't. But my question is, if this is actually a fictional book, why does it include instructions like take vague notes so you remember, and the connection has to be made with Mexico and drugs? Why did she say it can be short and to the point, but has to be done? Those are not fictional things. That sounds like instructions. So this fits right into the pattern of manipulation. And when one of these manipulators realizes that they've been caught, they start managing the narrative. They tell people what to say. They create these alternate explanations. They try to control how other people perceive the situation and what information gets told. So I'll be interested to see how the jury responds to this and how much of the letter actually gets admitted as evidence. Now, there are just two other points that I want to touch on in this case ahead of this February trial. One is the night that Eric died. And going back to that night, according to the charging documents and Kouri's own account to the police, she and Eric were celebrating because she'd closed on a house for her real estate business. She told investigators she made Eric a Moscow Mule, a cocktail made with vodka, ginger beer, and lime juice. Actually quite tasty. She said Eric drank it while she went to check on one of the children. So as we know, Kouri told police that she fell asleep in the child's room and then returned to her room around 3 a.m. And that's when she said she found Eric's body cold to the touch and called 911. But here's where her story starts to fall apart, according to the prosecution. Kouri told police that her cell phone was in her bedroom, but while she was with her child, the phone records indicate that that was a lie. Her phone was active while she was in the child's bedroom. The court documents state, quote, "In addition, tolls on the defendant's phone show that messages were sent and received during that time. These messages were deleted." So let's think about this. In the window of time between when she says Eric drank the Moscow Mule and she found him dead, she was actively using her phone and then deleted those messages. So as to what those messages were or who she was communicating with, I have some guesses, but I'm not going to speculate. I just am really super interested to see what comes out at trial. As we know, sometimes forensic examiners can have access to the actual text messages that were sent, even if they were deleted, especially if she was logged into her iCloud or logged into her Google account and she was messaging that way. We'll just have to wait and see. So the medical examiner who performed the autopsy on Eric, they determined again 5 times the lethal amount of F, and it was illicit, meaning that it was not prescribed. Now, 5 times, that's not an accidental overdose, especially not accidentally taking some of your own medication. To me, that points to not a recreational user who misjudged. It's a massive lethal amount. And even when there have been other drugs that are laced with F, it's not this huge amount when there's an accidental overdose. To me, this points to, it didn't work in the sandwich, didn't use enough of it. And so she wanted to make sure it worked this time, allegedly. Now, the day after Eric's death, Kouri did go on and close on that house that she wanted to flip alone. She later invited friends over for a large party at her home where, according to witnesses, she was drinking and celebrating. This all sounds eerily familiar to after Charles Vallow's death, Lori had a pool party. I understand that people grieve in different ways. I'm not here to police how someone should act after a traumatic loss, but when you put that behavior alongside everything else, like the life insurance policies, the deleted text messages, the alleged purchases of pills, Eric's own words to his brother, it's a pattern. And patterns are always what we have to pay attention to, especially when someone's life has been taken or when someone is in an abusive situation. Now, the last thing that was a huge red flag to me was this children's book that Kouri wrote. About a year after Eric died, she published this book. Again, it was called Are You With Me? It's a book about helping children cope with grief after losing a loved one. Again, I did a video about it on my channel. I'll have it linked in the show notes. But in April 2023, just weeks before she was arrested and charged with Eric's murder, she appeared on a local TV show called Good Things Utah to promote the book. And I've played that clip before. A lot of us have seen it. But what is wild to me is that there is a complete lack of grief emotions playing out on Kouri's face as she talks a bit about the book and about supporting her children, which to me, even if you are having problems in your marriage and you weren't super close to your spouse and things were chaotic when they died, I can understand not still having grief after a year that's visible in a public setting. But to me, what would get me would be talking about my children grieving their father, because it is so hard to watch your kids go through the grief process and not be able to do anything to help them, but just offer them comfort. So in this interview, she said she wasn't an expert or a published author, that she was just a mom trying to help her kids deal with their love of their dad. And she sort of alleges that her kids helped her write this book because she said, quote, "I think it gave us a sense of distraction for one, and gave us something to put our minds towards." Was she just projecting? Was she talking about giving herself something else to think about? Or was she really talking about her kids helping her write this book? Eric's obituary praises him as a devoted father and a husband. Part of it says, Eric was a family man who always strove to be the absolute best father and husband. He was an attentive and loving father to his 3 sons and a devoted husband to the love of his life and wife of 9 years, Kouri. Reading that now, knowing what we know about the allegations, that's pretty chilling. If prosecutors are right, Kouri helped write an obituary praising herself as, quote, the love of his life for a man she allegedly red-rummed for money. So from my perspective, as someone who has been around narcissistic people and their behavior for my entire life and studied these patterns, writing a grief book after allegedly unaliving your spouse is the ultimate emotional performance. Not just getting away with red rum, but being praised for how you're handling it in the aftermath. Think about what that book did for Kouri. It made her appear like the grieving widow, sympathetic. It positioned her as a devoted mother, and it gave her a public platform to control the narrative about Eric's death. I think she also wanted to insulate herself from suspicion because, again, the question I asked at the beginning of this video is who would write a children's book about grief if they caused that grief in the first place? But people who operate this way, personality disordered people with manipulative traits, again, not diagnosing because I'm not a professional, they can't help themselves. They have to be at the center of attention. They have to be seen as either the hero or the victim, or sometimes both. And sometimes that compulsion to be admired and to control how other people see them is what ultimately gets them caught. So Kouri was arrested on May 8th, 2023, just a few weeks after this interview on television. and she's been in the Summit County Jail ever since. So Kouri Richins is currently facing 9 felony charges: aggravated red rum, attempted red rum for the Valentine's Day alleged incident, 2 counts of distributing or arranging distribution of a controlled substance, 2 counts of mortgage fraud, 2 counts of filing a false insurance claim, and 3 counts of forgery. She has pleaded not guilty to all of the charges. Now, the trial is expected to take about 5 weeks, and jury selection is scheduled to start on February 10th. The trial itself is scheduled to start on February 23rd, and there have been several major pretrial hearings. Just a couple of weeks ago, the judge ruled on what evidence will be allowed at trial. He decided that portions of Walk the Dog letter can be used, but we don't yet know which those portions are. He also ruled that 5 pages from an orange notebook found in Kouri's home, which prosecutors say contains her firsthand account of the day Eric died, can potentially be admitted if prosecutors make a showing. He granted a motion from prosecutors to exclude evidence that Eric may have abused Kouri, saying the defense hadn't provided sufficient evidence of the abuse and that Kouri never provided video of the alleged incident despite promising to. The prosecution has a witness list of over 100 people, although not all of them, of course, will be called. And Kouri herself may or may not take the stand in her own defense. Her attorneys say that she's eager to tell her story, but that decision will ultimately depend on how the trial unfolds. And we've heard that before, that they want to tell their story, but then a lot of times they don't want to be subject to cross-examination, so they end up not testifying. Her defense attorneys, Kathy Nestor and Wendy Lewis, released a statement saying, quote, "After 2 years in jail, we are relieved Kouri has a trial date. She is ready for the truth to come out and for the false narrative which has been perpetrated by the media and the state to be put to rest." From my perspective watching this case, there are 2 scenarios here. Either Kouri Richins is a woman who's been wrongfully accused and has spent 2 years in jail waiting for the chance to prove her innocence, or she's somebody that meticulously planned her husband's death, nearly got away with it, and hopefully will now face accountability, allegedly. I historically have not been a true crime person. I was sort of thrown into the true crime world, or you could say I put myself there when I wanted to talk about my family's case. But the reason that I continue to cover true crime cases, especially like this, is to help people understand the dynamics of coercive control and manipulation and financial abuse. Kouri taking out multiple life insurance policies and messing around with Eric's bank accounts is financial abuse. It's one of the most common tactics in coercive control. It's one of the ways that abusers trap their victims. You can't leave if you don't have access to money, and you can't make good financial decisions if you don't have the entire financial picture. We saw this in the Sean Combs case, how he would set up his women in super expensive houses they couldn't afford themselves. And then they either had to stay with him or face potential homelessness, not being able to pay the rent. Eric Richins was a successful businessman, but Kouri allegedly controlled aspects of their finances that he didn't even know about. And isolating him away from the information is coercive as well. When he started asking questions and pushing back, like after the Valentine's Day incident, the danger escalated. This is what lethal coercive control looks like. And if you're watching this and something about your own relationship or somebody that you're close to is making you uncomfortable, if you're seeing financial control or other signs of manipulation, if your partner's isolating you away from family, if you feel like you can't trust your own perception of reality, if you've been gaslit, trust those feelings. Eric trusted his feelings and he told his family, and it still wasn't enough. So just digging into financial control, here are some of the red flags to look for. If your partner controls all the money and gives you a quote unquote allowance, if you're not allowed to work or your partner sabotages your job by making you late multiple times or making excuses of why you can't or shouldn't go into work, if your partner takes out loans, credit cards, or insurance policies in your name without telling you, if you don't have access to your bank accounts or to all of your financial information, or if your partner monitors all of the purchases that you make, or if you're blamed for financial problems that they created. It's just one aspect on the wheel of coercive control. But if you're experiencing any of these, please reach out for help. The National Domestic Violence Hotline has an 800 number and a text line. The 800 number is 1-800-799-SAFE, but you should always call 911 if you're in immediate danger. You can also text the word START to 88788. You can also go to domesticshelters.org, which is a nationwide organization that provides shelters for anyone who is trying to escape abusive relationships. And if you need resources specific to financial abuse, or if you're trying to leave a relationship and you need help with safety planning, that's one of the most dangerous times for people trying to leave these types of relationships. I highly recommend reaching out to the National Domestic Abuse website as well, which has a quick kill button on the site. You can push it and the website will disappear along with the history that you have been there. It's also always sad to me when there is an outcry like Eric did, where he texted someone and said that he was afraid that Kouri tried to poison him. He did all the right things. He removed Kouri from his life insurance policy. He changed his will. He told people that he thought she tried to poison him. And still, if these allegations are true, he didn't escape. And that's not because he was weak or naive. It's because coercive control is designed to trap you psychologically. And the most dangerous time is when a victim is trying to leave or when they've made it clear they're not going to comply anymore. And the last piece that I'd like to say I wish Eric would have done was to tell Kouri that he had changed her from being the beneficiary, because then I wonder if things might have taken a different turn. So we're going to have all the answers in this case very soon. And again, I am going to cover the trial itself extensively on my channel. I'll do a recap every single day. I'm looking forward to hearing testimony from Eric's family about what he told them. I'm interested to hear Carmen Lauber's testimony, the housekeeper. I'm super interested to see all of the digital forensic evidence of text messages and emails that will come in. That's usually where we get a lot of context. If there's a specific aspect of the case you want me to dive deeper into, or if you have questions about my coverage, please let me know in the comments, because I do want to make sure that I'm reporting accurate information and the information that you want to hear. And especially if this case has brought up some difficult feelings for you because of your own experiences in a similar relationship or coercive control, please know that you're not alone. It is possible to get help, it's possible to survive, and it's possible to go on and have a happy life afterwards. Again, I'll be putting some resources for you in the show notes. And if you've made it this far, thank you so much for being with me. If you need relationship coaching, you can visit my website at third-verse.com for a free consultation call to see if we're a good fit to work together. I hope to see you again very soon. But in the meantime, please do the thing that is the most loving thing for you, because even when it disappoints other people, it will make you the best version of yourself so you can care for the people you love. Take care and see you soon.